The Black Death, How a Plague Reshaped Medieval Society. In 1346, a small ship arrived in Sicily carrying a mysterious cargo, grain and rats. The grain was quickly unloaded and sold in the nearby city of Messina. But the rats, nobody knew it at the time, carried a deadly secret. They were infected with the bacterium Yersinia pestis, also known as the bubonic plague, and soon enough they would unleash hell on Europe. Over the next 5 years, this plague would kill an estimated 25 million people, which was about half of Europe's total population. This horrifying pandemic would change religion, the economy, and daily life forever. It earned the name the Black Death due to the black spots that would appear on victims' skin, a telltale sign of the disease. But while the plague eventually disappeared, its impact on human history is still felt today. So, what was life like during the Black Death? Let's take a look back. Rats carrying the plague most likely made their way off the ship and into the city's many homes. At the time, most homes didn't have indoor plumbing, or even basic things like window screens. And so rats were basically considered a fact of life. No one really knows how the plague bacteria got from the rats to the people, but once it started spreading, it moved fast. As the plague took more and more victims, entire families were wiped out. In the beginning, the symptoms were pretty nonspecific: fever, weakness, aches, and pains. But soon victims would start to show other signs: swollen lymph nodes, black spots on the skin, and horrible boils all over the body. Some people died within a week of showing symptoms. Others lived for several weeks or even months. Those who recovered often became immune to the disease, at least for a while. But there was no cure for the plague and no way to prevent it. When someone died, the only solution was to throw them in a mass grave along with everyone else who had died that day. Entire cemeteries filled up in days. Soon the stench of death hung over the cities. Victims' bodies were piled up so high that they created mounds around the city walls. Many survivors fled to the countryside, hoping to escape the plague, only to find that it had already spread to the villages there. To make matters worse, there was basically nothing people could do to stop it. There was no vaccine and no effective treatment. Doctors had a few ideas, though. One common belief at the time was that an imbalance of the four humors, blood, phlegm, yellow, and black bile, was responsible for most diseases. To fix this imbalance, doctors would use leeches to suck out the bad humors. They also prescribed baths, but not the kind we know today. Baths were seen as relaxing and enjoyable, at least by the wealthy, since they were usually done in rooms heated by servants. Another popular method of treating the plague was by inducing vomiting and diarrhea, because nothing says, "Get rid of those bad humors," like throwing up and running for the hills. Of course, this often made the patient's condition much worse, and many died from it. The most common treatment of all, though, was flagellation, or whipping oneself as a form of religious penance. It was believed that doing this would drive out the demon of the plague. As the death toll rose higher and higher, some people began to believe that the world was ending. After all, it seemed like God's way of punishing humanity. But others saw things differently. When the Pope died of the plague in 1344, many people thought that God had taken him because he wasn't holy enough. So when a new pope was elected, he decided to get himself a cool new title. Henceforth, he would be known as the anti-pope. This attitude of us against God grew stronger as the plague continued to ravage Europe. People began to question why God would allow such horrible suffering. Others blamed Jews and other minorities. Still, others blamed the work of Satan. In England, people went so far as to dig up the bodies of dead monks and burn their bones in a bonfire. They believed that if they could burn the remains of these supposedly holy men, it would somehow stop the plague. But maybe those people were onto something. There is evidence that the Black Death actually weakened the power of the Catholic Church. Now that people were dying left and right, and it seemed like no one could stop it, the Church's authority and relevance started to decline. With fewer priests to perform the sacraments and a dwindling number of churchgoers, the Black Death may have dealt a death blow to medieval religion. Of course, that's just one theory. What's yours? Let us know in the comments. Hey there, thank you for watching.